everything destroyed, bullet holes, small and big, craters everywhere. It was unreal.
Today we're going to talk to Adryel Talamantes. He's an American photojournalist. His work can be seen at Wall Street Journal, USA Today, Vice. He's worked in Iraq and Hong Kong, and now recently with the virus in Thailand. So, Adryel, welcome to Beyond the News.
How's it going, Danny? Nice to talk with you today.
Yeah, we're all in isolation now, and everyone's going through this coronavirus. So, why don't you let us know what you've been up to here? And I know you've gone around to shoot Bangkok, and maybe you can tell us how it's changed in the last few months.
I mean, for me, what really became noticeable was over the last 4 weeks, since the first week of March, being here in Bangkok, as I'm sure you've noticed, there are some people who almost always have masks on because of the pollution or just in general. But it was about 4 weeks ago that you noticed, first it was 50% of people had masks on, then 60, then 70, and now I'd say 95% or more of the people you see on the street are wearing masks. I started wearing a mask, I want to say, about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Everybody's been really on it in that respect. Public transit, the MRT and the BTS are practically empty. You've got seats to your right and left, so social distancing isn't really a problem for the most part. At rush hour, it seems there's still a good amount of people on there, but I mean, Bangkok is a shadow of its former self. Businesses closed down in 2 waves. First, it was the massage parlors and restaurants, if I remember correctly, and then it was the malls, and that caused tons of people who are migrant laborers or people who didn't come from Bangkok, who were just here to work. They all just left in a mass exodus several days after that happened, because they simply couldn't afford to stay. And that it was a bit distressing, because at the bus stations and at the train station, social distancing was impossible during those times. But I've never seen Bangkok so empty in this way. And of course, now today would have been the first day of Songkran, Thai New Year's, which is a big party, the world's largest water fight is how I like to describe it to people. And this is the first time it's ever been canceled in living memory, I believe.
Definitely. I mean, walking in the streets, it's really kind of crazy to see the traffic gone in this hectic city.
Exactly.
So yeah, man, maybe give us a background about how you ended up here and kind of the path you took as a journalist.
I took kind of a backwards way into first becoming a photographer at all, and then getting into journalism and doing video and writing. I got into the industry a little bit later in life than most. I didn't start taking pictures till I was like 27, and I'm 34 now. And I'm from Southern California, from the LA area. And all my life I had wanted to be a documentary photographer, be a photojournalist. I always loved National Geographic and all these other sort of publications that show you life around the world. And when I was 27, I had saved up a little bit of money, and I said, screw it. I bought a camera, and I came here to Thailand. I had been here a couple times before, so I was familiar with the place. And I decided I would just shoot my heart out as much as I could. And that was late 2013. And coincidentally, that's when a lot of newsworthy stuff started happening in Thailand in late 2013 and then early 2014. And that's about the first time I ran into you, I believe. And there was a lot of political unrest going on at the time, and a lot of opportunity for a green photojournalists such as myself, who didn't have any idea what they were doing, to just go and shoot a newsworthy event and just see what it's all about. And I did that, and I wasn't making any money at that point. I was just learning how to cover something. But at those events, all of those protests and all those riots, I met wire photographers. I met pro video shooters, and the people who became friends with me and answered my emails ended up teaching me everything I know and gave me a lot of encouragement along the way. I would show them my work, and they'd say, "Oh, this sucks. This is good. This sucks. This is good." And I grew from there, basically.
That's awesome, man. I mean, that's kind of one of the ideas I want to get out of doing these interviews is like to talk about how how people got started, and for people who want to get into this industry. So maybe talk a bit about like how important was it to just go and start meeting people and start building those connections?
That was, without doing that, it would have been impossible. I know a lot of people have the idea that you have to go and go to art school or go get a degree in journalism and do stuff like that. But I know a lot of people who have 4-year degrees in photojournalism or in journalism, and then they weren't able to do anything because they're stuck getting whatever job they can afterwards to pay off their student loans or what have you, when they could have taken that same amount of money and just gone out into the world, bought a camera and just given it a shot. And just a lot of people I know have learned this by doing it. One of my friends who's a video journalist now, has been in the industry for 20 plus years. He's got a degree in accounting, but he quickly realized he did not want to do that and just went in another direction. There's no guarantees in this, though. The way I like to explain it to people is, being a photojournalist or a video journalist is like being a musician or an actor. Everybody wants to get their song on the radio. Everybody wants to get some time in front of the camera. And getting a picture run by the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, or something like that, that can be like trying to get a song on the radio. There's so many people who want to do this. There's so many people who love doing this. That's what makes the competition so great. That's what makes the road up so steep.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Cool. So I mean, you know, this job kind of brings us to some crazy places sometimes. So maybe what's like kind of the craziest experience you've been through working in this industry?
I've covered a lot of stuff. When a lot of people think about photojournalists and video journalists, they think about covering war and conflict and dodging bullets left and right and blah blah blah. And that's the vast majority of it is not that at all, as I'm sure you know as well. But I have gone to dangerous places. I mean, I was in Iraq for 1 month back in 2017. I went to Kurdistan, to northern Iraq, because I wanted to cover the aftermath of the Battle of Mosul. The Battle of Mosul, if our listeners aren't aware, went on for about 9 months, from 2016 to, I believe it was June or July 2017, when the Iraqi army and coalition forces were trying to take Mosul back from control of the Islamic State. And all while that was going on, the debate in the back of my mind was, do I just go while the battle is raging? And that's, a very risky thing to do. That goes without saying, is going into a straight up war zone. The story needed to be covered. But when it comes to doing that sort of thing as a freelancer, you really have to weigh the risks and whether your work is really going to get out there. So I decided to hold off, and I went about a week or two. I flew to Kurdistan a week or two after the Battle of Mosul ended, and I first got into Mosul about 3 or 4 weeks after. And I wanted to look at the aftermath of the battle, at the reconstruction side, at the human interest side. And I was able, with the help of my fixer, Barzan Jabbar, one of the best fixers in Kurdistan, who's a good friend of mine, and he's worked with a lot of big names. I just met him through the grapevine of journalists in Erbil. He was able to get me into Mosul, and along with 2 other colleagues who I teamed up with, and we spent a couple days with the Mosul Civil Defense Force. And normally, the Civil Defense Force, the CDF, they're a combination of firefighters, first responder, medics. Anything happens and you need help in Mosul, you would call them up. Well, after the battle ended, the vast majority of their work, all their calls for the most part, dealt with civilians contacting them, asking for help retrieving the remains of their loved ones from the rubble of the neighborhoods where they lived. Some people knew that their loved ones was in the rubble of a building that got destroyed from an airstrike, or knew that their loved one was killed during artillery bombardment here or there. And because of how dangerous the situation was. It was impossible for them to get the body out and give them a proper burial. And so during the time I spent with the CDF, we went to one site in West Mosul in the old city, which was where the battle went on for the longest. And there was an impromptu mass grave in what was normally a small garden in the old city where people would grow vegetables and flowers and stuff, but was turned into a mass grave because people buried their loved ones there because they weren't able to get out, and they wanted to have their loved ones remain somewhere safe for the duration until the battle ended. And so there were two families who knew that their loved ones' remains were there because that's where they had interned them. And we went, and West Mosul looked like all that footage people see of Berlin in World War II. It was just the surface of the moon, everything destroyed, bullet holes, small and big, craters everywhere. It was unreal. And it being August in Iraq, it was incredibly hot. Every 15 minutes you needed to take a drink of water. It was unimaginable how hot it was. And me and the rest of the Civil Defense Force, along with my fixer, Barzan, we followed them, their vehicles, as they inched into the old city. And before we knew it, it just turned into just this hellscape. And we had to just go right and left along these bomb craters from where coalition aircraft had dropped their ordnance. And then once it got to the point where the vehicles couldn't even pass, we had to go on foot. And you can't really prepare yourself for this sort of thing, because before you know it, you're walking through what looks like just the set of a movie. There's no frame of reference that can prepare you for seeing this sort of stuff. And then the smells, because then you can actually smell rotting human remains under the rubble and this and that. And before you know it, there you are, and people are digging, and it's a really disconcerting thing to see. And here I am with a camera, with these people who are watching their loved ones getting disinterred, and I didn't really know how to feel, because here I am on what is probably the worst day of their life, recording all of it, trying to interview them, and just, you want to show respect, and you do show respect as much as possible, but it's there's no way to go about this in a way that can prepare you for it, especially doing it for the first time like I was. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
For sure, man. For sure. I mean, before I got into this work, I was always interested on the mental health side of what reporters and journalists and photojournalists go through being in these kind of places. And absolutely, like you say, there's nothing that's going to prepare you for seeing it, because everybody's watched the news their whole life, and we've seen images of war, we've seen images of battle or civil unrest or any kind of human devastation. But being there is something totally different. So how is it when you come back? I know when we did a bit of work in Bangladesh, and when I came back, it was just so bizarre being in a city that, like Bangkok, where it's just another day, and 12 hours earlier, you're in a refugee camp. So what was that like after coming back from Iraq?
I mean, I flew back from Erbil, back here to Bangkok, and the first night I was back, I remember I was in a bar with some of my friends, and in a restaurant, and everybody's living it up, having a good time, and then it's almost like there's a layer between yourself and the normalcy around you, because you almost want to say, hey guys, don't you know what's going on in the world right now? And the fact of the matter is, a lot of people are aware in a way, but they've never seen it. And a lot of other people, I've met a lot of people who are of the attitude that they don't watch the news. It doesn't involve them, and they go about their lives not thinking about what's going on in the larger world. And I can't judge that. I can't judge it.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, let's talk about the last place that we saw each other in the work environment, which is Hong Kong. and what that protest situation was like. I mean, pretty different than Iraq in a way. It was, there was some tear gas and some pushing and shoving, but overall it was pretty good for us to work in terms of gathering good images, not putting our life at risk too much, right?
It was very safe. It was as safe as something like that can be. I mean, granted, I got more than my fair share of tear gas. I mean, I had a mask on at all times, but one time in particular, my mask failed, and I got a nice red hot mouthful of I believe it's hydrogen cyanide is what it degrades to when the tear gas is past its expiration date, from what I read. But Hong Kong was amazing because I've never seen such large protest marches in my life. One protest march, I believe, was August 18th, which was one of the large planned million-man marches in a way, and they broke the number. It was estimated between 1.7 and 1.9 million people, I believe, and everybody congregated on Victoria Park in Causeway Bay, if I remember correctly. And it got rained out, but that didn't stop everybody. But it was just massive. I had never seen so many people in my life. And Hong Kong being a city of about 7.5 million people, if 1.8 come out, that's 25% of the population. So the police could do nothing. They didn't even attempt to stop it because it would have just been impossible. I believe the Hong Kong police force is 30 to 40,000. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's about their numbers. And there's just nothing you can do in the face of, over 1 million people marching. Hong Kong that was the longest story I ever covered. I was there for 10 weeks. I didn't come and go. I just decided to go in for the duration. And I learned a lot about covering a news event and seeing how something evolves naturally there. And I noticed all the photographers, both seasoned and first-timers and wannabes, came out of the woodwork to go to Hong Kong. It was like a sea of yellow vests at sometimes. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. A lot of people who wanted to give photojournalism a try or give video journalism a try went out there for the first time for a number of reasons. Hong Kong, it's a first world city, very developed. You've got high-speed internet, you've got good accommodations. A lot of people speak English, so tons of people, especially young people, came out from all around the world to go there. And I believe it's probably the most covered news event in world history, just because of everybody's got a smartphone, everybody can take a little bit of video. There were tons of live streamers, and I did a lot of live streaming work there as well for a client. But sometimes, even as safe as it was, there were projectiles flying around. There were instances where if somebody got hit in the head and didn't have a helmet on, you were going to have some problems. And I took a couple to the head with my helmet on as well. I got pepper sprayed pretty good in the face. They had that high-pressure water cannon that was laced with capsaicin, or it was liquefied tear gas. I still haven't been able to get to the bottom of that. And when it hit your skin, the water from the high-pressure water cannon, it burned straight for 12 hours. Nothing neutralized the burn. I don't know if you got any of that. So there were a lot of people who didn't really understand that you had to be safe, and that just because you have a yellow vest on, just because you're holding the camera, doesn't mean you're not going to get hit. And a couple journalists did get hit. There was that one Indonesian live streaming journalist who unfortunately took a beanbag round to the face, and she lost her eye.
And her eye, right? Oh yeah.
Yeah. She lost it. She's I don't know if they took her eye out, but she did lose sight. And that brings me back to kind of what I was talking about going to Mosul. Did I feel like just jumping straight into a battle, having never been in a war zone before? A lot of people, when the war in Syria was still raging at its peak in 2012, 2013, a lot of photojournalists who had never done anything went there for the first time, just thinking, hey, I'll give it a go. And that didn't end well in a lot of times. for a number of different reasons. So for people who want to get into photojournalism and who want to see conflict firsthand and see what that's about, if you really want to do stuff like this, slowly ease your way into it. Cover riots first. Cover low intensity conflict first. Get a hostile environment first aid training. Do that. I have a combat medic certification, so that just means that you know how to put a field tourniquet on. If somebody's arm or leg gets blown off, you know how to put that tourniquet on them so that it stops the arterial bleeding. You know how to put a chest seal on somebody so that just the things that will keep somebody alive or yourself alive until they can get to a real doctor. So many journalists go into combat situations, go into conflict situations, and they don't have any training whatsoever. They don't understand situational awareness, and that's just not really responsible. You have to have insurance as well, and that's being a freelancer, being somebody who isn't working for a big name client. A lot of times you don't have that, and you're just risking it all in the hope that you can come back with something. And so I can't stress enough that if you do want to do these sort of things, get medical training, get hostile environment training, get insurance, and talk to people who have done this sort of thing before. Have a bulletproof vest. Have an IFAC, an individual first aid kit. Know how to use it, and know how to use your camera too. Know how to use it inside and out. I've met a lot of people, especially in Hong Kong, who they didn't know how to completely know how to use the gear they had on them. And I wasn't going, man, you're stupid. I just would advise them, know how to use your equipment inside and out, just like a soldier knows how to take apart his gun with a blindfold on and put that shit back together. Know everything your equipment can do, and know you don't want to be fumbling around with your settings when a wave of tear gas is coming at you. It's just these little things that, I don't know, as the gear has become more accessible and as the world has opened up because of air travel, you can put yourself into a place that you might not be prepared for.
Totally, man. That's great. I love what you say about, being able to know your camera inside and out with blindfold on.
Mm-hmm.
That's great, man. Cool, man. So I think maybe I'll go with a fast round. So just kind of like a one sentence answer, something quick answer for the best thing about this job.
I mean, being a freelancer, I don't work for any one organization, so it's basically being able to pick what I work on, pick the stories that I work on. I went to Hong Kong. I decided to stay for 2.5 months. If I had had a staff position or somebody sending me out and saying, okay, you can go for a week or something like that, I wouldn't have been able to see as much as I wanted to. So basically just the freedom of being able to choose what I want to work on. That was a long run-on sentence.
That's perfect, man. You can keep them like that too. Okay, how about the worst thing about this industry?
The fact that if you're trying to support yourself 100% off photojournalism or video journalism or writing articles or doing a combination of the three, it's very, very hard to do that. I do a lot of commercial work. I do a lot of commercial video. I do a lot of commercial stills. I've never shot a wedding, but I do a lot of real estate. I do a lot of videos for restaurants, and I do food photography as well. But all of that is just secondary to supporting myself so that I am able to go and cover stories, and I do make money as well off of journalism. But it's a long road upward to getting yourself to supporting yourself purely from photojournalism or video journalism or documentary.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Cool. Yeah. Okay, and then the best piece of advice that you found for yourself that you could give somebody else.
Understand what type of work you want to make, understand what sort of stories you want to cover, and look through the work of photojournalists from the past, become familiar with the craft, and learn about it learn as much as you can beforehand. Go to workshops. I didn't go to get a degree in documentary photography or photojournalism. I didn't go to art school. I went to a couple workshops. I went to the Foundry, which is held annually. I would look up the Foundry Photojournalism workshop. I would look that up because that's a really good one to go to. It's just a week. And I would also encourage people to attempt to get into the Eddie Adams workshop. I attended the Eddie Adams workshop in 2016. That's a really good workshop to go to. People need to love this. People need to enjoy showing people the world through video, through stills, through the written word. It all depends. Try it out and see what fits for you. Let's try it out and see what fits for you.
Cool, man. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool, dude. This has gone pretty well. Anything else you want to get out?
Mm-hmm. I encourage everybody to subscribe to my man Danny's channel right here. He's got some good tips on editing in Final Cut Pro 10. I subscribe to it. I've been learning a bit too. That's what I encourage everybody to do.
Okay, man. Cool. Thanks, dude. This is fun, man. This is great.